Welcome to The Grow Show, powered by Steel. On The Grow Show, we share ideas, tips, tactics, and insights to help you grow your landscaping business based on our team's 40 years of experience running a landscaping company and working with other owners and their teams to do the same. New episodes are released weekly on Wednesdays. Here's your host, Marty Grunder.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever the case may be. This is Marty Grunder from Grunder Landscaping Company and the Grow Group. Thanks for downloading The Grow Show, powered by Steel. Today, we're going to have my friend Christianna Denelsbeck Rudder on with us. She's the CFO of the wildly successful commercial maintenance giant Landscape Workshop. You're going to love learning more about what she does, and you're going to learn a lot yourself. But first, a reminder, you can get the latest edition of The Grow Show delivered to your phone, tablet, or computer by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. You can even watch us on YouTube for an enhanced learning experience. The Grow Show is the greatest thing since our recently completed ACE Summit. We had an incredible event, folks, in New Orleans. The ACE Summit is the annual event where we have all of our ACEs, all of our peer group members, join us for 2.5 days of fun, education, networking, and because we were in New Orleans, great food, and of course, lots of new great ideas by getting everybody together. New Orleans was great, wonderful music, the World War II Museum. If you haven't been there, I highly encourage that. I'm just so proud of what we did there and how successful the members of our peer groups are. There truly is something magical about being in a peer group, folks, with other risk-taking peers. Isn't it time you looked into our peer groups? Go to growgroupinc.com and learn more. Now on to this week's edition of The Grow Show. Christianna Denelsbeck Rudder is the CFO of Landscape Workshop. They are based in Birmingham, Alabama. She is one of the smartest green industry friends I have. The Landscape Workshop is a $150 million a year monster based in Birmingham. They're growing. They have a great culture. There's a lot we can learn, and I'm very excited to share my friend Christianna with all of you. Christianna, welcome to The Grow Show, powered by Steel.
Thanks, Marty. I'm glad to be on today.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Help us understand how you got to Birmingham, as I think you're from Buffalo, New York, right?
So I'm actually from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, originally.
Okay, I don't know where I got Buffalo. Okay, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I did spend 2 years in Buffalo right out of school. So I went to college here in Birmingham Southern College, and then moved to Buffalo, New York for 2 years and started my career.
That's where
in banking.
I got it. Okay.
That's right. So after 2 years and the cold winters of Buffalo, not being used to it, headed back to Birmingham to take the job at the family office that previously owned Landscape Workshop.
Fantastic. I know you have a young, growing family. Tell us about them. Tell us about your husband. Tell us a little bit more about you personally.
Sure. So I have now been married for 7 years, met my husband in college, and now we have a 3-year-old who is full of personality, Harlow, and then a son that is 1 year old. And I always say we also have a fur baby, Bane, who is a bad dog, but no, we love him. He's a pit mix and a lot of fun.
Oh, awesome. Well, listen, I know for sure you could have worked in many industries. Why did you stay in the green industry? Tell us what that's all about.
Sure. So after working in Buffalo and banking for 2 years, decided I wanted to come back down south and actually really had a position in economic development that I thought I was coming back to Birmingham to take. And when I was reaching out to references for that position, had someone say, there's this family, they own a couple of businesses, one of them being Landscape Workshop. You really ought to check out this analyst position with them. And started just learning about the businesses. They had a lot of them field services related, and really thought there's something here. We can really grow these businesses. And specifically, once I got super involved with Landscape Workshop, this industry is just so friendly. I have been going to Alleviate, or the version thereof, for 8 or 9 years now, and every time I go, I've been to your events. People are so friendly, so willing to share information. We're all fighting the same battles every day. This is a low margin industry where it's kind of a grinded out industry, and it's just been so fulfilling. The people that I've met here, and just been a lot of fun to grow the company at Landscape Workshop too.
I love the story, and I do agree. I think probably sometimes, Christiana, as you know, I've been doing this my whole life. This is my 40th year in business. I probably take for granted how nice people are, and that's so true. I know one of the things I often hear from friends that are in other industries, and they might end up at our event grow or at Elevate, or they hear about it there, or they're new to the business. They often say what you just said, like, I can't believe how nice everyone is. And I guess hearing you say that, I believe it, but I almost kind of think like we're a bunch of mean, honorary people. I mean, we're not, but I think it's so nice and pleasant to hear that. I'm curious about what experiences that you've had here that have allowed you to learn the most about finance and accounting in the green industry. Because to me, finance and accounting, I'm speaking from my perspective as a coach in our peer groups. That's the part, quite frankly, where a lot of owners and leaders of landscaping companies struggle. Like they don't like it, they're intimidated by it. Tell us where you've learned all this. I know you went to school for it, but you've also learned a lot. Tell us a little bit about that side of it.
Sure. So, I mean, actually, my degree is in business and economics. So, I'm not even an accounting major in
Right.
undergrad. I don't have my CPA. But I think that understanding the accounting, the finance side of your business can be so powerful, and it's actually a lot more approachable than a lot of people think that it is. Once you start to understand just key concepts, and keeping it simple is so important. But my history here started out as an analyst, moved into a manager role, and actually at that time was managing our recruiting function and our marketing function. So
Wow, I did
different
not know
different
that.
paths,
Wow. Okay.
completely when we were a lot smaller. And then our CFO at the time decided that he was getting close to retirement age. Had the conversation with J.T. Price, our CEO. Is that something I was interested in? It was a way for me to stick with the business. I mean, originally I had thought I'll be here for 2 or 3 years, go to business school, find something else, but that seemed like an incredible opportunity for me to grow. And so just learned as I went and started out VP of finance and then CFO in 2021. But when you ask where I learned the most, it was really in the failings. Probably 2 months into taking the vice president of finance position, we found out that our accounting or accounts payable person on staff had been stealing money from the
Oh my
company.
goodness.
And so that's why when I talk to anyone in the industry, I talk to them about getting ACH alert, so that we know when people are drawing out of the accounts, and positive pay, so that we know the checks that are coming out of our account is so important. So learned a lot through that because we were then without an AP person on staff, and I needed to learn that position so that we could pay our vendors week to week. Same thing on the accounts receivable side. We had someone that was struggling in the position, couldn't grow with the company. And I think she was relieved when we parted ways, but had to fill that position for a little while, and had a lot of great people on my team that helped with that. But you just learn when you just have to hold things together. And I think of all the things throughout the year, the hard situations are where you learn the most.
I often refer to something as no option behavior. Like you're there, you can't quit, you don't have any other option than to dig in and figure it out. That sounds like kind of what you're saying. Like the daily transactions, the other things that you were dealing with, that probably, those are the nuts and bolts of a finance, the part of finance and business, and that's where you learned a lot, I guess.
Absolutely. And the same thing as we grow too. I mean, when I started out in that position, we always have month end closing calls, which I love. Our general
Wow.
managers probably
Yeah.
not so much, but the
Right.
general managers in there with their branch administrator, and then accounting staff, and a lot of times JT, the CEO, and the COO is sitting in there too, and they're 30 minutes. But we run through our Aspire list, we run through our financials, the full income statement, and we're trying to do two things. One, just make sure we have accurate financials, but two, make sure the business owners understand what's going on in their business on a monthly basis. But when I started out, we had 10 or 11 of those because we had 10 or 11 branches. Now we're at the point where we have 30 plus closing calls. So we've had to do a lot to pivot and make those calls more effective and pre planning so that we don't lose our audience. But just the growth pushes you to learn as well.
And so you said that you love those calls. What you mentioned a couple things. Is there more like when you say you love them? What's more? Why do you love them so much?
So it's really, especially at the size we are, the one opportunity a month for me to talk to every general manager in our business and get a 30,000 feet view of how their business is doing. Are we struggling? Do we have a contractual maintenance gap? Are we struggling on enhancements, as a lot of our branches are this year? And I know a lot of our friends in the industry are seeing the same thing. How's our labor trending? Are we being more efficient with labor this summer as compared to last? Just looking at trends and their businesses, understanding where they are, and then thinking through, is there a way my team can support them in either learning about their business or with any challenges that they're having?
I'm sure you've read work that the Gallup organization does. They're the largest workplace research organization in the world, and they have released tons and tons of information in the last 10 years on the power of engagement in the workplace and what a difference that can make in the performance of the organization. And you said you're doing these finance meetings to make sure the numbers are accurate, and then secondarily that it's understandable. And I think so many times we kind of gloss over this, but that employee, team member, whatever you want to define them as, I think, Christiana, the more they can understand, the more engaged they can be to understand the why. And I don't know how you do the calls, if you have 30 of those separate now or if you're pool some of them together. But boy, I could see no different than in our peer groups when we share everyone's numbers, like light bulbs are going off that you're hearing that someone else is struggling with or someone else is doing well with. Hey, they got that figured out. I should be able to figure that out. Is there a lot of that that goes on as well?
Absolutely. I think, they all have access to one another's financials as well. So they have access to our accounting system. They can go in and pull any branch and compare themselves.
I
And
love
then
it.
our COO does some comparison reporting on a monthly basis too. Here is where everybody is stacking up on SG&A percentage or labor percentage in each month. And, now we're large enough that we have that comparative data across maintenance branches and then 5 install branches too. So it really helps them within their own peer groups look at that. But I love how excited some of these GMs get around their
I see.
financials.
Yep.
Um, I had one of them call me last night, in a nice way, was kind of beating me up about why corporate overhead was higher than budget in the last month. And he's looking at that because his
That's,
bonus
yeah,
for
that's
the year end is tied
fantastic.
to that.
Right.
It's exactly the behavior you want, which is
Amen. Exactly.
everyone is thinking like an owner.
Right. You all have done, I don't know how many acquisitions now. Is it 28, 29,
I think 30
30?
now.
Okay.
Yes.
And we only have an hour. I'm sure we could talk about this topic alone for 3 hours. I'm sure a lot of people listening to the Grow Show powered by Steel are either they're looking at an acquisition right now, they've done one, they're pondering looking at it. What have you learned through all of those acquisition processes? Is there a couple highlights you could share with us?
Sure. So I think the biggest lesson is a tough one, which is culture is so important. And
Yeah, and that's not even, I mean, there's a financial element to it, but that's so interesting that a CFO here, folks, would say culture. So keep going. That's
yeah,
great.
so just understanding the fit and who you're partnering with way before you even sign the letter of intent, LOI, people will say. Um, how is this person going to interact with me after the sale? What does my role look like? What does this mean for my people and my customers? I mean, so many times we talk to potential sellers and they care about the money. I mean, someone is lying to you if they say they don't, but they care most about their people and their customers and the brand that they have built because that's their baby. I mean, we've done 30 deals, maybe more than that. It happens. It could be that we are desensitized to it, but for them, this is the one deal and we need to be super sure that the culture is a good fit. So that's important. And we've learned that the hard way, that it takes time to blend these cultures together. Systems are easy. I mean, I have been told, the back office is almost like wallpaper. You shouldn't notice it unless it's bad. And while that's a
Love it.
little offensive to a finance
Yeah,
leader, it's true. It's true. The
right.
people and the culture are much more important. So we're there to support. But we've had to put in place a post merger integration team, a PMI team is what we call it. We have 7 individuals on that team, and they're there living with the company after the deal for 3 months plus, depending on the needs, because it's so important that they understand our systems, yes, our technology, yes, but our culture most importantly.
I love it. And that's so interesting that culture is first. And I see it like that makes total sense to me. And I would, that if they're not going to come in here and play nice together or whatever, and they got to be able to come in and play in concert with everyone else on the landscape workshop team.
That's
You're
right.
Most companies, Christiana, don't have a true CFO at their company. Your company is of a size you have to have one. But can you describe what you feel your role is as a CFO? And are there some lessons that or some words of wisdom that you would share with maybe a $4 million a year company that doesn't have a CFO? Maybe they have a fractional CFO. Maybe their accountant is that. Maybe they are that. Is there some kind of common ground that you found, no matter what size the company, that whoever's functioning in that CFO role has to be mindful of?
Sure. So I think most importantly is I view my job as getting accurate data into the operator's hands. And you have something that you say, maybe you can help me, but it's basically good leaders with correct data make good decisions,
Yeah, right.
something along
Good,
those lines.
good managers make good decisions with good information.
Exactly. And so I think
Right.
that's primarily the role of a financial leader, no matter the size of the business. And maybe that's just we're on a journey to understand what should the estimated hours be on this job site, or can we job cost this job or this customer, starting with the basics, because there's so much power in understanding how our business is functioning. So I think that's the primary role of your finance leader, whatever the size of your business. Um, at our size, there's an audit we've got to get through. There's tax compliance. So there are always these, licenses and tax issues. So I think at any size that's relevant. You've got to have somebody that's overseeing that. Um, and then solving some of the problems with the business that operators don't want to deal with. Insurance. Do we have a competitive insurance program? IT. Do we have some way of getting people technology and solving their problems, whether that's outsourced? We're at the size we have a staff of two. They do an amazing job. But kind of the minutia that operators don't want to deal with when they're trying to run their business. When we talk to these sellers, there are really two things that come up in terms of why they're ready to sell. One is they're sick of dealing with the labor issues that we all have. It's really hard to staff. We don't want to go through another growing season having to deal with. So I think in some organizations that rolls up under the CFO. For us, HR reports directly to the CEO, so a little bit different. But they also say just the administrative, the insurance, all the paperwork, they're kind of done with that. And hopefully you have someone in your organization that can solve those problems for you so you can focus on running your business.
That is just so true. I mean, I hate to admit this, but I hate insurance. I am at times, we're very fortunate. We have a wonderful H-2B labor piece here that's working well. But man, Christiana, as you well know, when you don't have labor, that just gets old. Like you just kind of get. I mean, I've never given up, but there's days where you're like, why is this happening? Why why does it have to be this difficult to make a business work? I can certainly relate to that. And then I guess the concept that I'm sure you and JT are able to sell the folks that you've acquired on, look, we can be better together. Like we bring you in here, we let you do what you do best the majority of the time instead of that stuff, and we'll grow together. I mean, I think it's a great thing. Have the way you looked at numbers or some of those numbers changed over time? Like were there numbers that you looked at when you had two branches and now you have 30? That is there anything that's changed there?
Definitely the details of what we look at has changed. I would say we've always been incredibly focused on growing our top line, our revenue, which I know you talk a lot about. And at the same time, while we're growing at a high quality level, which for us is profitability, EBITDA performance. So we've always been focused on how do we get bigger, but maintain a high quality while we do so and maintain profitability. But our ability to drive deeper and deeper down into, okay, we want to grow revenue. Well, what drives that? Retention, enhancement sales, contractual maintenance sales. Well, what drives that? Getting a level deeper. Proposals. How's our proposal activity look? How are our site audits? Do we have good quality so that our retention? So I would say as we've evolved, because we have better systems, we have better processes, we've been able to drill deeper down into what's actually driving revenue and EBITDA growth. But we've always kind of started with those basics and tried to get better and better every year at how we drill down.
Well, and I love what you were saying there, kind of a root cause analysis. Like, here's where we want to be. What are all the factors that go into that doing well? I mean, if you're trying to add $2 million worth of growth to the company and you close 50% of the calls you go on, you got to bid $4 million worth of work. And
That's
where are
right.
those leads going to come from? Are we going to market them? Are we going to get out and warm call? What are we, I think I know probably for the first 10 years of my business, Christiana, it was like just a guess. It was like, let's just see what we can do here. And then the more you get data and start analyzing it, and the concept of good managers making good decisions with good information, I think you're like, well, no, wait a second. If I'm going to grow by 2 million, my closing ratio is 40%. That means, oh, okay, now where are those leads going to come from? Like, where are they physically going to come from? Where are they personally located? Where should we market? Do we need to add a salesperson? Would it be better to look at an acquisition to add 2 million? Then we don't have to do that. What do we have to pay? I mean, it's just all those things. I think the more you grow and the more you learn about the numbers and you see more evidence as to why things happen, I think it just kind of opens your eyes up as a manager and a leader to a lot of potential solutions. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I like how you kind of articulated keeping it simple. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. I mean, a lot of our metrics are very basic. It's just, to your point, what's our sales goal?
Right.
And if we don't know what that is, I always tell people your annual contractual revenue, usually 10% of that is a good sales goal in any given year. And then backing into what's my close rate? Maybe that's 20%. Let's multiply our sales goal times 5. I think you can
Right.
keep it very basic and not get
Exactly.
overwhelmed because
Exactly.
your team cannot consume complicated data. And
No.
while we love Aspire, we have run that program since 2017, we still feed a lot of data out of Aspire to our operators in email and very simple Excel that has reds, greens, and yellows, which is something I have to give our COO, Joseph, credit
Love it.
for
Love it.
really just making that simple and digestible, because that's what drives behavior, not the most complex system with all of the granular detail.
I love it. I just I'm for all intensive purposes kind of heading up our sales efforts in our lawn care company, our startup. We're going into our third season. And I put a pretty lofty goal for next year on our director of lawn care. And I couldn't tell through his body language if he agreed with me or thought it was crazy. I guess I didn't give him a whole lot of time to say either way, but I then started breaking it down to how much in sales this was a month, how much it was a week, how many accounts we had to sign up on a daily basis. And by the time I got done breaking it all down, he looked at me and he's like, well, that's attainable. I see how we could do that. But sometimes when you look at a goal, just the critical mass of it, it's like, like you probably can't tell, but I've lost 20 pounds since June. Well, the thought of losing 20 pounds is like, how am I going to ever lose 20 pounds? How am I ever going to be able to go up on stage at Grow, 25 pounds lighter? That 25-pound brick is like, I can't do that. But then when you break it down into 9 months, it's like, well, that's this a month. That's like 3 pounds a month, but that's only like half a pound. I mean, come on, Marty, half a pound a week. And I think I'm not trying to oversimplify it. I'm glad you're laughing, but I think a lot of what you're saying is like that. Like if you just look at it in its totality, it's overwhelming. But when you break it down into the little bites, it's like I gotta, I gotta, I gotta say what Christiana has given us here. I mean, the math would say that it's doable.
That's right. That's right. And, I like what you said too, breaking it down. How do you eat the elephant one bite at a time?
Right.
But also tying metrics to that, because I'm sure when you started on this journey, maybe you thought you took a lot more steps than you do in a given day. And so starting with your baseline and actually
Check that
looking at
box.
the
You're right.
numbers,
I'm not
it's
I'm
so
not eating
powerful.
poorly, but I started writing it down. I'm eating terribly. No wonder I weigh 215 pounds.
Right. And
Yeah.
the same is true with our sales teams. Oh, I make 50 cold calls a week. Okay, well, let's just start with monitoring those over the next week. Oftentimes, not with everyone, it's less than what we think. So
Yeah.
I think actually
Right.
tying a numeric metric to our goals is so important too.
I think we could stop the Grow Show right now with Christiana. We would have helped everybody. You've helped me. I mean, you kind of as saying this stuff out loud, I realize once again how important it is to put the why with things. You work with I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. You work with a very dynamic person in J.T. Price that is your CEO. I love the guy. He's pragmatic, he's thoughtful, he's empathetic, he's funny, he's energetic, he's blunt, he's honest. I don't know what to say bad about him, to be honest with you. But I doubt it's a walk in the park, to be honest with you, working for JT. He's not somebody that's just going to be like, whatever you want to do is fine. That's great. So with that being said and understood, and maybe the listeners here can substitute whatever name they want for JT in there. But what tips, tactics, strategies could you share with us today about how to work with a demanding CEO? Like many of our CEOs have similar personalities, and I think it would be important for them to maybe see themselves in JT and hear how you work with them. Just share with us what that dynamic is like, and could you help us in that department?
Sure. And now I'm going to get Vince in trouble because this is something that he and I talk about our bosses and how
Oh,
we
I
interact
love
with
it.
them.
I love
Because
it.
I think you guys have some similarities too.
Well, for those
In
that
most,
don't know, Vince Torchia is my partner here in the Grow Group. And I guess now that you've said it, I am Vince's boss. So I might
yes.
be worse than JT, though, Christiana.
I'm not going to go either way on that one.
Right.
No, you guys are both excellent leaders. And I think Vince and I both feel very honored that we get to work with
Oh,
you and
that's
in all
nice to hear.
seriousness.
Very nice.
And really, meeting JT was part of the reason why I took this position. I think he was someone who had a lot of characteristics that I want to have when I grow up in my career and when I arrive in my career. And I've learned so much being here, both from him and our COO, Joe Sokoloff, who are both past McKinsey consultants. So they are,
Yeah.
to your point, they have very high expectations. They are very direct, very transparent. I never question where I stand when I'm talking to JT. We have weekly one-on-ones. He gives very direct feedback, which I actually think a lot of people of my generation crave. It's very, very good for me to know where I
That's
stand.
awesome to hear that. Love that.
Yes, I have learned how to take feedback as a gift. I think our first reaction, especially when it can be tough feedback, is, you're kind of taken aback, but learning to have a positive reaction so that feedback keeps coming just to make you better is super important. But it has helped me a ton in my career too. I think our performance culture has been what's kept me around for 9 years. I know that if I show up and work my butt off, especially just from an hours perspective, when I was younger in my career, being the first one here, last one to leave, that's going to be rewarded. And it has been throughout my career. So it's changed me, developed me, but just been an incredible experience. And I think it's important in our culture of transparency. I always say you can only move at the speed of trust. And so knowing that management team all interacts with each other very directly in a very transparent way, but we can move a lot more efficiently and quickly. And I think that's what makes us successful too.
So it sounds like you don't curl up in a ball when JT has some feedback for you. But I also know I've spent enough time with JT, and he always has something nice to say to me as well. My guess is JT's really good at specific compliments as well. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. And it has been interesting now that I'm CFO of the company because it very much started out as a mentor-mentee relationship. And I think that's true for you and Vince as well.
Right.
And so getting promoted, I've had to learn to step into the position of, no, in this conversation, I'm your CFO and I'm disagreeing with you respectfully because of this, because I don't want to be a yes man. We need to be comfortable disagreeing, having healthy conflict. I mean,
love
that's
it.
true across all of our
Love it.
relationships because that's where we can be most successful as a company when people feel free to speak their mind and are not afraid of conflict.
I will give a little inside baseball. That's one of Vince's sayings where I'm going to get like kind of vulnerable here. Vince and I have a rule, Christiana, that I will just tell him whatever comes to my mind. And I do that with him because of the level he's at with me. I do the same thing with our president at Grunder. I don't hold back. I don't even think about what I'm saying. And I've told both of them, if you're going to work with me, um, and it's less of an issue with Seth. I think I could tell Seth he's ugly. You're dumb, and he'd be like, I don't care. That's fine. Vince and I are more sensitive. Um, and Vince and I have got a thing where I just say, hey, Vince, I haven't even thought about this, but this is why I'm upset. And just let me get it off my chest, because I just have found that the same thing goes with my wife, Lisa, who you two have spent some time together as well. Like sometimes you just have to say it, and it goes out, and it goes out into the atmosphere. It comes back in your mind, and then you process it again, and you're like, well, that was stupid. Why did I think it that way? But if you keep it inside, metaphorically speaking, it's like there's no therapy that occurs. There's no, like, you can't calm down. You can only stay on the rough side of the situation you're in. You can't like get processing into solutions. So we do a lot of that. And I think what you just talked about there, a little bit of discord, disrupting equilibrium, being able to have, we call it hot, honest, open, and transparent conversations. You mentioned something that early in your career, I think basically what I heard you say was that the first in, the last out, the FILO accounting term, I guess we can use there. Um, what what else does someone do to get promoted? What have you had to do, or what advice would you give for the aspiring member of a landscape company that wants to get promoted?
So when I was in my early years of banking, I was in a management development program, and through that we had exposure to the executive vice presidents of a very large bank, M&T Bank in the Northeast. And I remember one of the EVPs that talked to us, his name was Rich Gold. So he had the best name to be an
Yeah,
EVP at a bank.
I'll say.
Um, but we had a person stand up in class and ask this question, what do I do to get promoted? And his answer was almost startlingly direct, but he said, do a good job at what you're doing right now. Do the best job at this job. And basically keep your head down and perform. And when you do that, you'll get noticed and you'll move up. And I have truly, that's what I've experienced here. I've never said,
Yeah,
oh, I'm going there to be the
right.
CFO, or I'm going there to grow this company with the team from 20 million to 140, 150 million. It's just been head down. Let's do the best job today, taking it day by day. I think that helps you be less overwhelmed, and it always pays off.
That is just awesome wisdom and experience share. I think sometimes people get it wrong. They're not focused. What I'm hearing, another translation of that is, don't get distracted in your current job so much that you take your eye off what you're doing, trying to call attention to yourself. The best way to call attention to yourself is to do a great job at the job you're in, so you prove your mettle there, and they need to challenge you more.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The power of mentorship. Christianna, who've been your mentors? How do you find a mentor? Um, I want to say this in as politically correct way as I can, and I don't want Emily, my daughter, your friend, to be upset with me. But there still remains more men in our industry than women. I think that is a fairly accurate statement. If you just go to conferences and you look around, it's more men than women, and you have fit in great. You've done a wonderful job, super talented. How have you found mentors? Because the mentors have to be some men. It can't just be all women.
That's right. And in this industry, it really has been a lot of men that are not afraid to reach out. And Kevin Kehoe was really the first.
Oh, what a
We
great
went
guy. God bless Kevin. Rest in
amazing.
peace, buddy.
He, 2017, we decided to go with Aspire. We had the tough negotiations both ways because we were one of the larger early companies. But once we
Wow.
were in, we were committed. And Kevin was so wonderful. He would call me sometimes like 6 a.m., which had to be earlier his time. And just, what do you think about the product? Or what do you think about this or that? And just was such a champion for me and saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. How you and I met was he asked me to be on a panel out in Arizona years ago. And last
Right.
minute, I think he asked you to moderate the panel that you didn't even
Right.
know you were moderating.
No, he didn't.
Um, and then, once we had that connection. You did the same thing for me. Asked me was I interested in the NALP Foundation Board? And, I'm like, that's never something I would see myself doing. But if you guys think I'm good enough, I'm super interested. So I think and of course, JT and his day-to-day mentorship too have been
Yes.
so invaluable. But people that maybe I'm not going to say are older, but have a little bit more experience,
Well,
that are willing,
unfortunately, I'm old enough to be your dad. So yes, it is older people.
but that are willing to reach across, gender lines, age
Yeah.
gaps, and just maybe say what you see in the future of someone. I see that with my daughter when I speak words of what I know she can be rather than maybe what she's being in the minute. It's so impactful and it just changes that person's trajectory. So
Oh, I
super
love what
grateful.
I love what you said there. And I think, one of the things I've learned is you can find talent in all kinds of places, and it's important to give someone a shot. I was down in New Orleans last week at our ACE Summit, and there was a table full of my wife and I ended up sitting with them when we went on the riverboat cruise. I don't think a single one of them was over 28, Christiana. And they were asking me questions. It was so cute. The one guy sitting next to me, Gerardo, said, "Hey, let me move, Ethan, so you can sit next to Marty and ask him questions." And we went to walk to the hotel that night. My wife goes, "I just thought that was so cute that they were like sharing. They wanted to talk." I said, "Lise, you know what the funniest thing about that was? I was learning just as much from them. Like, what resonates with them? What are their challenges? What other solutions should the Grow Group come up with to help?" They were the age of the people that's going to grow my business to the next level. I got to be able to relate to them. And if you don't spend time with all walks of life, I don't see how you're going to be able to grow an organization. I just don't see how you do that. It takes people of all types.
That is so true. I'm learning that through, a direct report that I have that's a little bit younger, how she prefers to be communicated with. Her one-on-one cadence, her feedback is probably even, more desire for it than my generation. So learning all the
Yeah.
time through that. And then I will say too, for the women in the industry, I do think there are some things it's great to have a female mentor,
Yes,
for. Like
I would
I
agree.
have an executive coach here in Birmingham who has helped
Yes.
me navigate things that men can experience, like maternity leave and how to plan for
Yes.
that and kind of very specific
Yes.
things. So I think that has been very powerful for me to have Lynn as a coach and a mentor as well.
I love that. That makes me kind of want to, something else I wanted to ask you. That's a good segue. I know from spending time with you, you got a lot on your plate. You have two young children, a husband, a very demanding job. I mean, you don't have like the buck stops with you at Landscape Workshop with a lot of things. So I always like to ask our guests, like, how do you stay organized? What technology and programs do you use to help you get done all the things you have to get done? What about being a young parent? I mean, how does all this work in your life?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question because it's some days I'm not perfect at it,
Yeah,
just being honest. As far as organization goes, I'm a person who lives off of their calendar. Everything has a calendar slot, even reminders. And I have an Apple Watch and I'm constantly like, where do I need to be in 30 minutes? That's driving my
I love it.
day. And even the things I want to be intentional about. I think you and I both heard the speaker at Elevate's kickoff that was talking about the pattern of thinking through being grateful and scanning for 3 new things to be grateful for every day. That's in
He
my
was he
calendar
was
now. But
fantastic, by the way. He's one of the best
yes,
speakers I've ever seen. I thought NALP did a great job with that selection.
I agree. But that,
Yeah.
that's something that's not really a time block, but something I want to do. So it's in my calendar. And then personally, I use a lot of shared notes on the iPhone. So like our grocery list is a shared note that my husband and I can both edit. Um, and I'm learning to outsource some things. Like I was really not someone who wanted to outsource cleaning the house and finally had to let that go, or
Okay, let
the
me ask you,
groceries.
why? Is that the finance person in you or is that the private person in you? Like what was the deal there? Why did you not want to outsource that?
A little bit the finance person, but
Yeah.
also I have this false idea that, oh, this person won't do it as well as I
Yep, I
can.
get it.
Turns out someone can do almost
And
everything
and
better. And a lot of the people on my team do things better than I can when I was in
and see that
their
to me,
roles.
that was the lesson I hope you were saying, because I think when we go through life saying only I can do it, you're limiting yourself to a whole lot of different things.
Yes, 100%. And then I would say just learning to let go of perfection. For years and years,
Yeah.
everything needed to be perfect, or I would get incredibly wound up and really emotional about it. And having children, you know this, you've got to let that go and just
Yeah.
focus on being your best person in that moment and being present and getting
Right.
the 80-20 rule.
Right.
Get the important things right and the time with them and the lessons you're trying to teach them and the things that you can't get back, the time with them, get that right. And everything else seems to flow from there.
Something that's helped me a lot as I've gotten older, and that is that this concept around things are never as bad as we think they are, nor are they as good. They're somewhere in between. And I so much love hearing you throw out something simple as a shared grocery list. Don't tell Lisa this. You've probably heard me say this before. I have her birthday on my calendar 30 days before the birthday saying, go get Lisa a present. Our anniversary is July the 10th. On June the 10th, the reminder comes up to plan something for the anniversary. Because in our household, if I were to go out the day of our anniversary and get Lisa something, like that would not be an act of love. That would just be me checking off the box. Now, I am creating a box, but I just think that we have so much going on that if you're not intentional about your calendar, I just don't see how you can juggle multiple priorities. I just don't see it.
Absolutely. I agree. And some of us are just more task oriented. And to your example, you showing care is just making it fit into what you
Yeah.
can follow, which is the task on your calendar. And
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you don't see the need or see the person, but that's how you monitor it. And so learning
No,
that
and
that's okay.
I appreciate you saying that. I always feel somewhat bad saying that I do that, but I share it so that because to me that's a solution for something that you shouldn't be screwing up.
That's
And
right. That's
I
right.
just, so, sooner or later, Lisa's going to find out what my trick's been. But if you ask her if I ever missed her birthday or her anniversary, she's going to say, no, he has not. And
Yeah.
that's what we're after. Okay. So
That's right.
I,
That's right.
I love the tactical side. A couple more questions here. We're with Christianna Denelsbeck Rudder on the Grow Show powered by Steel. She's throwing down some leadership gold here, folks. Christianna, what do you do for fun? What books do you read? How do you stay sharp? Talk to us.
So if I'm being honest, I finally just finished a book that was just a fun fiction book that I had started before my son was born. So it took
Oh
me
my
a year
gosh.
to read
Okay.
the book. So there's not a lot of book time podcasts. Obviously listen to a lot of industry podcasts, yours. But for fun, I am a runner. It's something that I didn't adopt until I was married. And I had not lived with someone in like since freshman year of college when I got married and just needed some thinking time. And so I picked that up. But right now I'm training for a marathon on December 7th. So that is coming up. But that's kind of my hobby, that and spending time with my family.
Yeah, and running is a great thing. That's good for your health. It's a good place. I'm sure great ideas come. I just hope you're continuing to be safe with your running.
Yes.
So, and
Yes.
where you're running. So we'll just leave that as a sidebar. So, you mentioned earlier about the NALP Foundation. That is a cause that is near and dear to my heart. Um, Giving back. You've played a big part in the NALP's Foundation's wild success in the last 4 years. Let's talk about what we've done there in the foundation, and then tell us about any way else that you give back.
Sure. So, you were my introduction to the NALP Foundation. I would say at its core, that organization is just trying to expose our industry to really kindergarten through college students because we talked about it throughout the podcast in a number of ways, but we all have a labor issue. And the way we fix that is exposing our industry, which is a great way to make a living to students as they're coming up through elementary, high school, and college. And so the foundation is providing scholarships. They now have a video game, Roblox, trying to get the
It's
younger students
incredible. Yeah.
engaged, and then a high school competition that has landscaping as a piece of it. And that's just been phenomenal. We always have the green battle at Elevate, but
Which
just
was
anyone who's
your
interested.
idea. That was
Yes,
your idea. It's a family
yes,
feud function. I think this past year we raised $160,000.
that's right.
We're in my time on the foundation, we're closing in on raising close to. I'm not an active person on the foundation anymore. I give them money and I help with the ultimate green industry battle. But it's about $1 million between the money that was raised at Grow in the auctions and the money that we've raised the last few years. It's going to a great cause, like you said, to create awareness for our organization.
That's right. And so, anyone that's interested in learning more about that, I'm always happy to talk about that. But phenomenal. And then locally, I'm involved with Rotaract, which is a Rotary for 35 and under, and have chaired a local foundation through that. And that has been just a very energizing way for me to get involved with the community and give back too.
I think it's important to give back. Again, when we talked earlier about engagement, I know for a person in the position that you're in, the position that I'm in, I think we have a responsibility to give back. I think it's what we're here to do. And if we don't take some ownership in making the communities that we live in or the industry that we work in better, we really don't have any right to complain about it. I think there's still way too many people. Some of them sit on the sidelines, don't do anything, and complain. But I think most people just sit on the sidelines because they don't think they can make an impact. And you absolutely can. You need to get involved. I have a billionaire for a mentor, Clay Mattil, passed away last August, wonderful guy. And I told him one time I had breakfast with him, I told him, thank you for all the time that you've spent with me. I appreciate it. Is there any way that I can help? Like, this may sound stupid, but could I write a check to a charity of your choice? And he said, no, you don't need to write a check. He said, give your time. It's real easy to write a check. It's the time that is the big thing. Give your time, help others, take time, slow down, mentor someone, do that. And I can still hear him telling me that, Christianna. And I think that's just so important. There's multiple ways to help. It's not just about writing a check.
Agree completely. I mean, if we really think about it on a week to week, day to day basis, that's our constraining resources, our time.
All right. I want to end with a funny story. I heard a rumor that you once found Thomas Rhett, the wildly successful country singer that I have actually seen eating in Rosemary Beach at Galleons. I think you know the restaurant. I heard a rumor that you found his dog and you returned it to him. Can you tell us about that?
Okay, so I think I led you astray a little bit here. I had to do my fact checking because it's now been 6 years ago. It was actually Justin Moore's dog, who is another
Justin
very
Moore's
famous country
Funny.
singer.
Okay,
Yes.
yes.
So we were vacationing with my family down in Rosemary 38 area. And as I mentioned, I have a very intimidating looking pit bull, but it's the sweetest in the world. And we had this little terrier come up on our porch of our vacation home. And he was so macho, way out machoed my pit bull. He's marking everywhere. We brought him in, gave him some water, gave him some food, but like he seemed like the boss. He seemed like he knew what he was doing. His name was Hank, fitting full country theme. And so we let him go because we didn't want to hold someone's dog that maybe was like the next door neighbor's. Maybe 2 minutes after we let him go, I'm just on my Twitter feed because that's what social media was back then. And I see Justin Moore's posted the dog's picture saying he's there looking for the dog. We, of course, responded. We knew where he was, and he was found very shortly thereafter.
Oh.
But we were all, jokingly, like we could have actually got a ransom for this dog or at least country music tickets. But
yes. Got it.
Yes, that is the story of Hank the dog.
That makes more sense. Well, Justin Moore is pretty cool too. I'd take that.
Yes.
Christianna, it's been great being with you today. Thank you. You're a beacon of hope. I hope there's young people that you're inspiring, and I'm an old person and it's inspiring to listen to you. I learn something every time I listen to you. I appreciate your leadership. You have spent a ton of time with my daughter, Emily. Emily just adores you. She loves listening to you. Vince, my partner, loves being with you. I hope, for selfish reasons, that there's a young person listening to that and you've just motivated them to either stay in the industry, maybe come into the industry, because you're what's right with this industry. So congratulations on your success and thanks for your time today.
No, thank you so much just for your friendship and your mentorship. It's meant the world to me. So I really appreciate it.
Well, we got a lot more we're going to accomplish. So thank you.
Thanks.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for this week's edition of The Grow Show, powered by Steel. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to The Grow Show. And if you can, give it a rating or share a comment. That helps more success-minded landscape professionals find us. And if you really want to help us, share this episode with your team or any landscape pro you know. Take out your phone right now, text this edition over, tell them Christianna rocks, listen to it, get better. Thanks for joining us on The Grow Show this week. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Grow Show. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and head to growgroupinc.com for more information and resources to grow your landscaping business. A special thanks to the folks at Stihl, whose support makes this podcast possible and whose reliable handheld power equipment makes our jobs easier daily. We'll talk to you next week.